let me pull this up. Hit go live. All right, it thinks I'm fine. All right, I think I'm in. Let me double check. Yep, we're in. All right. All right, welcome everyone. I'm gonna get a quick mic check from Damon before we start this, just because we want to make sure our audio is good to start. So, Damon, just give me a quick mic check.
Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3. True Detective,
All right,
Season 2, Episode
listen
7.
to this on the way. All right. All right, you're sounding good. We're gonna fucking roll. I think we're gonna roll. So I'll be monitoring the chat. Damon will be monitoring the chat. Let us know if there's issues, but hopefully we're good. But today we are doing episode 7 of True Detective Season 2. We are the Winter Hill Warriors. We are comprised of me, Chetty Britt, and my boy Damon. What's the title of this episode, Damon? Do you know? Nice.
Black maps and hotel
Black
rooms.
maps and hotel rooms. All right, so we're gonna get right into the breakdown. If you're watching us at this point, you know how we do it. I kind of do play-by-play. Damon is color commentary. We ended last episode with the escape from the manor where all those sex parties were going down, and Woodrugh and Velcoro basically rescued Annie and got her the fuck up out of there, and then they stole some important documents. So that's where we begin this episode. We see that they are all holed up right now in 2 motel rooms because Annie actually killed a security guard in the escape, and then they also managed to actually find the missing girl, Vera, who is still kind of having some, she's still getting out of the drugs that she was doing, so she's still trying to sober up. So Woodrough's looking over these documents right now, and fucking Annie, meanwhile, is in the other room with Ray, and she's just like, she's so traumatized right now because she says like she saw all of the important guys there. So I think she ended up seeing the chief of Vinci PD, the police chief, Holloway, also saw the attorney general who's running for governor, the Asian guy named Geldof, also saw Osip, obviously just all of them, right? And so she's like, what the fuck? All of these guys were there. And then she also starts kind of talking a little bit about, you know, this traumatic event that happened to her, right? Basically, she was abused when she was young, like very young. We're talking like what, like 10 years old? And she was having flashbacks while she was on Molly to the incident where like some old man was like, hey, come hang out with me. And then she went to the woods with him. So she's kind of just loopy right now, still coming out of the drug high. And she's making a little bit of sense and then talking about some random things that went down in her childhood that were very traumatic. And Valcor was like, wait, what are you talking about? So she's realizing this and she's like, oh my God, what the fuck? And then she kind of comes on to Ray. And Ray actually does the bigger thing. He's like, no, we're not doing this right now. You're not in the right state of mind. This isn't going to make you feel better. And she says it usually does, but Ray is a somewhat good guy when it comes down to things like these. So he's like, look, just you stay here. I'm going to go check on Woodrugh and Vera. So Ray goes to the nearby hotel room, or motel room, I should say. And we find out that in these documents, right, I think the way it was it was these holding companies that had Tony Chisani's name on there. Osip's name was on these holding companies, and these companies received land from Catalyst, and the land that they received were parcels of land all throughout where the railway was supposed to be built. So all of these guys have their names on documents binding them to the land that they're going to receive, and ultimately, if the railway gets built, then all of these guys are going to make absolute fucking fortunes. They also find out that Casper had shares of the land, but he had an interesting clause in his contract where, like, in the event of death or whatever, his land and his shares get to be sold to everyone else for very, very low prices. So there's some fuckery afoot there, potential for motive, right? And then at this moment, Woodrugh gets a text from this unknown number that's been blackmailing him this entire time. And this time, the text message has photos of him and his ex-lover, a guy that they were in the Middle East with. Just, very incriminating pictures. And, this person is like texting Woodrugh, basically threatening him, and he doesn't know who it is. So he goes, okay, I got to get out of here. I got to go check on things that are going on at home. So, the last thing I'll say in this scene is, I think Annie is supposed to stay, and then Ray has to go meet Frank, right? So that kind of does it for the opening scene. What did you think about that?
Yeah, I think the centerpiece is really Annie just cycling through all that and just probably going insane, right? That's a complex situation for sure. And this episode to me is all about the idea of either repeating the cycles of the past things, like the relationship she had with Elvis, the dude from the beginning who kind of looked like, I don't know, he was like very white, trashy guy with like the really thin mustache at all. But they've caused more harm than good, right? And you keep an eye on the documents when they talk about him. Casper's effectively got the opposite of a no trade clause in here, which is the worst thing to have in a contract. Like, it puts a target on your back. We can see where Osip was on the come up, where Frank was on the decline and got really squeezed out. Really, it just kind of seems like a lot of anxiety is crashing down in the first hotel scene.
Yeah, the Casper stuff is interesting because it's like that represents a clear motive for what could be, the reason for his murder, but we will see more as the episode progresses because we're going to find out, like, it might not be that simple. All right, so then we cut to Frank, and Frank is playing, blackjack by himself, it looks like? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Blackjack by himself. He's kind of just like ruminating right now. So in the last episode, Frank basically finds out that Blake is against him, that everyone's working to fuck him over. The only people that he can trust essentially is himself, Ray to a certain extent, his wife Jordan, and his one remaining henchman, Niles, right? Nails, not Niles. So Frank's playing, and then Jordan comes over, and he basically tells her, look, the Mexicans got us by the balls. They're going to start moving drugs out of the clubs 3 days a week. And then Jordan asks Frank, hey, if we were to leave right now, how much cash could you get? Like, what is your net worth liquid? He goes, $200K, maybe $300K tops. And Jordan's like, let's just get the fuck out of here. And Frank goes, I'm 45. That would be throwing 45 years of my life down the drain. Could you ever see me working at an Applebee's? Like, could I ever just go and just have just a run-of-the-mill job? And Jordan's like, look, I worked at one once. It's not bad. Like, let's just get out of here. At this moment, Ray pulls up to give some updates to Frank. Jordan knows, obviously, that Ray, last episode, showed up to Frank's house with the intent of potentially killing Frank if he didn't hear what he wanted to hear. And then they get ready to sit down, and Ray gives Frank some updates. I'm going to pause here before we jump to the next scene because it shows Woodrugh with his girlfriend Emily in the car. If you had thoughts on this.
Yeah, I just saw Frank is dealing out the blackjack hands is almost symbolic. Like, he wants to where he has all these players at the table and he's only part of the game. I feel like he feels smaller than he has in the past at this moment. Out with 300K, which in today's dollars is a little closer to $500,000. That would not be a bad way to fold the table, in my opinion, especially given what he has now. I had a bit of a strange night line when Ray comes through, kind of cracked me up as well.
All right, let's keep it moving. Next scene, we jump to, so we see Woodrugh. He's like, I think this is where they're just trying to get everyone out. So I think I called this, let me see, what did I call this? I called this hiding their loved ones. So this is basically where everyone is just basically making contingency plans. So Woodrugh grabs Emily. He's like, yeah, you just got to hide out for a bit. and just for a few days, she's like, "Why? We're having a baby." She's in the dark. She doesn't really know what's going on, but Woodrow's like, "Look, it'll get handled by then." And then I think Annie is doing the same thing with her sister Athena, and she tells Athena like, "You just got to disappear for a bit." Athena's like, "How long do I just have to disappear for?" No one's really willing to do this, but because in their minds they're like, "What the fuck is going on? You guys are just telling me I have to just leave and run away and hide." And Annie's like, "Look, you just got to do it. I saved a girl from the party. I know a lot of shit that went down at the party. It's gonna get really bad. You have to disappear. You got to go up north to Oregon, and you gotta trust me on this." So, they're all making contingency plans. We see Woodrugh drop Emily off at this motel room, and his mom is already there. So it looks like they have reconciled. So Woodrow's mom and Emily are staying in the motel room, and Woodrugh says, "Look, 2 to 3 nights tops. Like we'll handle this. Don't leave and just get room service." What did you think about that?
Paul is super obsessed with this idea of trying to be someone he's not. Like, we sniffed that out from the moment that we knew about his sexuality. I thought it was interesting when he just cluing, strange pairing to have his mom in there with Emily for the foreseeable future, given how we last saw him leave off with his mom. But, you get, you know, so the fact that she's now in the situation where she's like constantly cycling through this idea of saving somebody, whether it's her. And I think it all kind of stems from her childhood trauma.
Trying to save like the younger version of herself too. But we'll get more into that a little later.
Yeah. All right. So next scene, we see Ray and Frank actually having their discussion. So Frank's like getting a little bit candid. He's like, "Look, it sucks that everyone's just fucking everyone's fucking turning on me." He's just having some moments where he's like, "Man, you bring someone up and they just kind of fuck you, basically." Sorry, give me a second. Also, if you're watching live right now, we're having some audio issues with Damon stuff, but we're gonna plow through it because honestly, we just can't figure out what the fuck is going on with Video Ninja. So I'm just gonna keep playing around as Damon talks, and we'll just figure it out. But anyways, so fucking they're talking right now. And I think Ray gives them updates on what they found at the manor, the paperwork. So basically just saying like all of the big power players are involved and they're all involved in this land deal. And based on the documents that we have, like we know that Casper's shares in the land were sold to other companies, and those companies were owned by the mayor's son, Tony Chesani, as well as this older Russian dude. And Frank immediately knows that that's Osip. So Frank knows that, it's just further confirmation that he's fucked and he's got to do all of this on his own, basically. So this is where Ray suggests, look, maybe they killed Casper for them. My old chief Holloway of Vinci was there as well. Also the girl Irina Rufo, what's it called? Pater to Pont. Wait, let me see who says this. Oh, this is when Frank responds and he goes, "Look, I know about Irina Rufo. She said a cop gave her Casper's stuff to pawn. And we know in last episode, Irina was murdered by the cartel for basically admitting to cooperating with police. So she's now gone, and Frank tells Ray that. So Ray's like, fuck, okay. So Irina Rufo is off the table. And now that both men kind of know the position they're in, Ray then asks Frank again for the name of the man who, gave you who my wife's attacker was and basically misled me and I ended up killing this guy. Who gave you that information? So Frank is like, look, I'll have it for you by the end of the day. So this entire time, Frank has obviously known who it is, but he's been thinking about how he wants to approach this. So he goes, word of honor, I'll let you know. And Ray goes, I'll continue with the belief that it wasn't you. And then Frank goes, I just need some alone time to handle all of this. So that's how the conversation between them goes. What did you think about that, Damon?
just watching Frank slowly unravel, because the oath of betrayal was the straw that broke the camel's back, and then the idea of helping it. Like we talked about last time, Blake is totally juiceless. He's B-level talent, maybe C-level mafia talent, and Frank's losing out to him. Like you see something dark is bubbling in him, even darker than the usual stuff we know. This is the Frank that his dad locked in the basement, and he had a Frank that we're seeing right now. And then there's nothing like the transition from inside the dark casino to a bright sunny day.
All right,
like
so
or
next scene is Velcoro basically updating Woodrugh on what's going on, and telling Woodrugh, look at the LAPD service records and just go back to 1992, see what's going on there. I'm gonna meet with Davis and just basically update her. So we then see Vera. She's feeling a lot better now, and she is talking to Bezzarides, and Bezzarides is basically asking her like, all right, so what the fuck is going on? And Vera actually is like, look, I want to stay in the circuit. I'm making good money in the circuit. I don't want to leave. You know, I had something good going. And Bezzarides is like, wait, why? You know, so this is like the second girl that Bezzarides has now come in contact with who has kind of said that they want to stay in the sex scene, right? Like the first one was her sister who was like, look, I'm doing cam girl stuff, I'm making money. And now Vera's saying, look, I didn't need help, I want to be there, I want to make money. So Vera got introduced to the scene when she was a maid at that fucking institute that Bezzarides' dad was working at, like that weird like spiritual place. And she says when she was there, Casper was there, saw me as the maid, got me in touch with the sex party circuit, and Casper's girlfriend at the time, who was Hungarian, Tasha. We heard about her at the beginning of the season. Tasha knew about these sex parties, and she was actually planning on using these sex parties as blackmail to get what she wanted. So Tasha obviously got caught. Vera was trying to warn her the entire time, but Tasha ended up getting caught, and it's implied that she ended up getting tortured. Bezzarides then asks about these blue diamonds, and Vera is like, look, yeah, I had heard about these blue diamonds from Tasha. Tasha said that Casper had shown her these diamonds, and that was it. But ultimately, Tasha got caught, and I think she's fucking dead at this point. So at this point, Vera's like, why the fuck did you rescue me? I don't want to get out. And then Bezzarides is like, it doesn't matter. I told your sister she is on the way. And this is when the sister arrives, and Vera gets into an argument with the sister. So it's going to be an interesting affair between them, but whatever. I guess Bezzarides kind of did her job. And then when Vera says, look, I want to get back on the scene, Bezzarides says, now that they know that you talk to a cop, you're pretty much fucked. Like if you go back there, they're going to kill you. So you really have no other choice. So what did you think about that rescue?
Kind of the same continuation of Annie trying to rescue her sister Athena from
like the cam girl lifestyle that she thought was bordering on prostitution. She's repeating the same type of deal again. Some of these girls just do really, really bad stuff for cash once they get in the lifestyle. Like I believe that Vera is into this lifestyle now,
but I think once you get in, it's really hard to back out, because that's a lot of cash up front. There are a lot of connections that you have, and you're sort of numb. So once you've really crossed the line, it's kind of hard to come back and rejoin mainstream society in that way, right? There's a thing is fucking. It's like,
I guess so, but a little one of those lines that you wish you could throw away from this season. But all in all, you kind of feel like Annie is realizing that what she's been gunning for the whole time isn't really her.
I don't know how else
that
to
was
say it.
that line was like. Let me go back. Let me try to find it where it's like, she's like, what does she say? She goes, maybe you were put on Earth more for more than fucking, and then she's like, everything is fucking, and it's like, interesting line, but I don't know. It's kind of just too on the nose,
Yeah, yeah. It feels like a tongue-in-cheek Guy Ritchie line that you would chuckle at in the middle of a movie with like
All right,
Hugh
let's
Grant.
keep going. Next up, we see Woodrugh. He is now researching and looking back in the archives of LAPD and trying to see like what was going on in 1992. This is when the riots were happening, and he finds out that that the neighborhood where the Sable Jewelers robbery went down was actually being policed by William Holloway at that time, who is now the police chief of Vinci PD. And the officers under Holloway's command were none other than Kevin Burris and Teague Dixon, who is now dead. And on top of that, he looks a little bit deeper, and he's being watched this entire time, and it looks like the silhouette of Burris is watching him. But he finds out that at that time, Ben Casper was the accountant for the internal audits and assets division of the LAPD. So all of these guys most likely knew each other. Like, obviously the officers knew each other, but they most likely knew Ben Casper as well. So they were kind of all, in cahoots. And then he looks a little bit more and he realizes that there's now an APB out for Bezzarides because she killed that security guard at the party. So this is all very, very bad. And I'm going to pause it there for just, this type of discovery. What did you think about that?
Yeah, of course, Dixon is attached to this. He's got to be, right? But the idea of Dixon and Burris being together is just, Burris has really set everybody on edge ever since he came on this scene to start the season on. Terrific job from him. Just the way that he made his presence creeping and looking over his shoulder. Like, you can kind of tell Woodrugh is pissing off maybe the wrong people. Out of all three of these characters right now, finished up her most dangerous of how deep he's in on this, because we just know this web is way deeper than it ever started as, which I really like about this season compared to where we go later on in the True Detective saga, because like they are laying it really thick the last two episodes, and it really starts hitting, and like, this is objectively a very good episode of television, even though the season itself is kind of maligned as it builds toward the end of the episode.
Yeah, the last episode is gonna be a fucking banger. All right, so then we jump ahead to this is fucking Blake gets called in for a meeting with Frank, and Frank's like, yeah, you're late again, and Blake's like, no, I had to cover the pit, I was just taking care of some stuff. The girls had a little private thing last night. Here's the money. It's a lot of money. I think it's like 15 G's he gives them. And Frank's like, look, you're a natural born pimp working these girls. He keeps talking, and it's clear that he is not happy with Blake. He basically calls Blake he says whores can still have integrity, something about like pimps can't. So interesting outlook from Frank, but Blake doesn't really catch on to what's going on. So then Frank gets closer and basically tells Blake, like, look, I know that Stan was following you, and most likely you probably saw him following you, and then fucking you're the one who killed him, and then you gouged his eyes out to make it look related to the Casper death, right? And Blake knows he's fucked, and then this is when Frank just fucking bottles. Well, he doesn't bottle Blake. He just whips the glass across his face and just shatters it on his face. And before we see the aftermath of that, we quickly cut to Velcoro trying to meet with Davis, and he finds a bullet wound through Davis's fucking chest. So they got to Davis. She is now dead. They basically have lost the only person within the PD, the government, whatever, that had sway, and she's now gone. So Valcoro's like, fuck. So he quickly gets out of there. We then cut back to Blake. Frank is now, basically has his foot on his head and is like, what else has been going on? Tell me exactly what the fuck is going on. And Blake is like, look, Osip for the last year has been running girls trying to take your spot ever since you met with him in Paris. He has wanted to displace you. So it's kind of fucked up that Frank was trying to make a business deal and bring Osip in because he needed the money. And then he basically invited the fox into the chicken coop. So Blake's like, look, Osip has been quietly turning everyone that works for you against you. The only people that he didn't end up getting were Nails and Stan. So Frank then starts choking out Blake, and he's like, did you kill Casper? Did Osip kill Casper? And Blake's like, look, we don't know anything about Casper's death, but they were always going to fuck you over. Casper was going to fuck you over. Osip was back in this. So you were always going to get fucked over. Then I think Blake also says that Stan, and this is interesting because he says Stan caught him in Osip meeting, and then Stan wasn't going to tell Frank right away. Stan actually tried to blackmail Blake for more money. So maybe Stan wasn't as loyal to Frank as it seems, maybe he was more loyal to the to the money. And then the last thing is, and this is when we find out that Blake was actually the guy the entire time that gave Frank the name of the alleged rapist of Valcoro's ex-wife. And so Frank is like, why'd you give me that name? That guy way back. Why the fuck did you give up that guy? And Blake says, look, it was a two birds, one stone type of situation. Apparently there was a meth head that was coming after Blake because Blake had ripped him off. And then Blake had heard about Valcoro's wife, so he figured, look, this is a perfect opportunity for me to get noticed and for me to handle someone who is coming after me and basically get rid of a threat. So as Frank is about to choke out Blake, Blake goes, look, I can get you the money back. Like there's a meeting going down between Osip and Catalyst at tomorrow night up at Catalyst, McCandless's ranch. So McCandless is the CEO of Catalyst, and this meeting is where Osip is going to give McCandless $12 million in cash, basically for Casper's share. So it's going to be a big cash handoff, and Blake's tells Frank exactly where it's going to be and says, look, I can help you. They don't know that that you've now compromised me, so I can start working for you again secretly. Like I can be an asset, man. Another thing he says is Osip's people have bought basically bought up Frank's clubs. So they're going to own all of Frank's shit essentially. And Frank goes, look, is there anyone against me that I don't know about? And I think Blake says that it's Ivar and Nails, right? Like those are the only people who aren't against him. So knowing all the information that he needs to know, Frank then shoots Blake in the gut and watches him fucking die. So lots of shit just went down. What did you think about that?
Yeah, it's just Frank, Jordan, Nails, and Ray against the world. Because I think they said
so Ivar turned as well.
Ivar turned towards the end or something. One to him. Some of Blake's, I just want to read you some of Blake's lines here. And I want you to, think about how convincing they are.
Yeah, that's insane.
I was taking care of some stuff.
That's fucking insane. Hold on, are you still talking? Hold on, I can't hear you, Damon. Let me see if you're still going. Okay, I can say something now, I think.
Back now?
Yeah, you're back now.
All right, word. I was taking care of some stuff. You'll get it back, boss. Everybody knows you will. You never should have brought this to Osip. You taught me, make your own opportunities. Like, he was never coming out of this alive. It was just a slippery slope, bad take after bad take. It is a little bit of karmic justice for Frank, though, because he passed on Blake's bad tip to Ray. he also promoted Blake when Blake said he was pushing baby aspirin on people at the club. Like, he knew Blake was a slime ball. This is the move that brings Blake into Frank's orbit, and it's almost Shakespearean that Blake ends up being the one to overtake Frank in the scheme. Not literally, because he's dead now, but in terms of getting one over on Frank, Blake is a key part of that deception. So Frank pretty much made his own bed with his ambition to bring Blake on, to keep on running things, and to keep a blind eye towards Blake while he was making all of these moves. So while he was trying to get in the corridor, he wasn't even watching his back. The full takeover from OSIP, like, everything's bought and paid for. Frank's world just feels like it's full of people who are bought and paid for. Like, money talks for sure. And the influence of the corridor supersedes anything he could do. So really, whoever controlled the corridor was going to get to run this, right? I think Frank should have done it when he had the chance, and now it's biting him in the ass. This is the same ambition that caused the whole tailspin to happen. So it may be too little too late, but boy, was it satisfying to watch him pop a cap in Blake. I don't know how else to put it. When he smashes him with a glass and rolls his face into the man, it's great.
Yeah. It's also, Vince Vaughn is 6'5" in real life, so he is a big man. Him choking Blake out against the wall is pretty crazy. And yeah, good point there on Blake basically being brought in because, he had some ruthless ambition, but it came to bite Frank, in the ass at the end of the day. All right, we then jump ahead. This time it's Annie telling her dad that you got to go as well. So it's, additional, hey, get your family out of here type of scene. So she's talking to her dad, and they actually talk about the trauma that Annie had, the situation where she got assaulted as a child. And I think she was gone for 4 days. So her dad's like heartbroken even bringing it up, and is like, look, we looked for you in the forest for 4 days. And he's like, I remembered his face, all of this. So it's just, they have a little heartfelt moment, but you could see that her dad is still just like very, very much in pain at the fact that his daughter went through that. And he feels useless for not being able to do anything at that time. Her dad does say, even though she knew Chisani, and he knew Pitler and stuff like that, and I think he knew Casper, like back at that time when they all met at this institute, they were all looking for like a spiritual journey. So everyone was very different. So her dad's like, look, I didn't know them that well. Let me see. Then, yes, as they get ready to leave, we see Annie's former partner, Elvis. He's the one coming to escort her dad and her sister, and they're going up to Oregon. And she actually tells Elvis, look, let them just drive off somewhere. You're going to be driving behind them, just making sure that that they're okay. But then I don't want you tailing them to their exact location, because in case someone finds you and tries to torture the information out of you, like, it's better if you just don't know. So they actually hug it out, and Annie does actually have someone who has her back in her former partner. So that is pretty much it on that. What did you think about that, wrapping up Annie's family in a way?
It was nice to know that her dad wasn't a weirdo. Like, he was a weirdo, but in a hippie sort of way.
Right, he's not a criminal.
Like, exactly. He's not a criminal, and he's not a creep. And you could tell that he feels terrible about what happened, because even though he doesn't know specifics, like, like, a little girl goes missing for 4 days, gets in a van with some strange dude, like, things are going to add up eventually when it comes down to it. So he absolves himself a little bit, and I think she finally gets to confront something that she's been trying to confront probably for her whole life. So he did kill the dude. So that was kind of a nice line for some closure. And then the closure with Elvis. Elvis is probably the only good dude. That was cool just to see that too. I might try to cop that jacket. Good scene, heartwarming.
Yeah,
for
that
a
is
show
a fucking sweet jacket. Let's see. All right, then we look at back to the casino. Frank's filling in nails on everything, and he goes, "Look, Ivar has been turned. Everyone's been bought. It's just me, you, and Jordan. We're not gonna let everyone know that we're onto them." So Jordan comes in, sees Blake's body. She's immediately down to be a soldier, and Frank is like, "Look, we're at war. They're coming for me. I'll meet you tomorrow. Like, I got plans." Then we cut over to Woodrugh or actually no, not Woodrugh. This is Frank. So I think what Frank is doing here is he's trying to convert his cash into diamonds because it's a lot easier to carry. So he's at like a jeweler pawn shop type of guy, like just an expert in handling this type of shit. And right now the guy has these diamonds that are 5 carats that are worth 700,000. Frank says he needs diamonds that are worth 5 to 6 million in cash. And this is a problem because right now Frank doesn't have that type of cash to front, but he tells the guy like he'll have the cash. So the guy's like, "Look, obviously something is going on because you don't have the money right now and you're trying to make this exchange. I don't want to do that because it's just too risky." And Frank goes, "Look, what's the percentage it's going to take for you to do this transaction?" So the guy goes 40%. So this means like Frank would, I'm not going to do the quick math, but Frank would basically have to shell out like, what, 8 million or something for the 5 million of diamonds, something like that. So it's a steep price, but in Frank's mind, he's going to get the 12 million. He's going to steal the 12 million from that meetup. So the next thing he goes is he asks, "Hey, have your friends ever been to Venezuela?" So this hints at Frank's future plans. He's basically going to run away to Venezuela. So then you see him meeting with like this travel agent, and he's got these tickets booked out. And then I think the last thing he needs is a passport. So that's when he meets with some sketchy ass Albanians, I think. And Frank has done business with these guys before. And I think I'm trying to figure out what the prices were, but Frank is paying $300K for these passports for basically him, Jordan, and I believe Nails, right? And then I think they're like he's gonna pay them another $500K on top once he gets the passports. And then he tells these guys, "Look, right now the Russians are coming. Osip is coming. He's gonna take over your businesses within a year. He's coming to just dominate." So this obviously gives the Albanians some fear. Right now he gives them $100K, and he says, "I'll give you 700 more tomorrow." So that's because if we do the math on that, it was 300K for the passports, or I think it was going to be 800K total for the passports, basically. And actually, no, I lied. All in, he's going to give him 800K. So he's giving him 100K right now, and he's going to give him 700K the day after tomorrow. And what he's going to get in return are not just the clean passports. He's also going to get 2 cars that are clean and fast and some guns. So actually, so he's got this whole list of just like all of the ammunition that he needs. So you see like Kevlar vest, gas mask, tear gas. Like this guy's about to go on a fucking war mission. So it's going to cost him basically 800K all in. And then I think he says, if this all works out, I'll give another $500,000 to you guys. So basically, if he steals the 12 million, I think like basically half of that is going to go to fees, right? Essentially paying these guys off. And then he'll basically have the remaining 5 to 6 million in diamonds, and that'll be enough for him to live on with his wife Jordan. So Frank's contingency, what'd you think about like those scenes?
Smartest thing that he did was turn the Albanians, or at least try to like look like they're not just coming to take my meal away. They're coming to take all the meals away. Everyone's food's getting taken right now, not just getting in the first scene just how much of a real one she is. "What can I do?" is the first thing she asks. Like, she doesn't freak out. She doesn't really have a negative reaction. She's ready to chip in however possible. That's why Frank loves her. Favorite line was when the Albanians are pressing him a little bit, because it does seem like he's spectacular, like a totally spectacular comeback, and he just goes, yeah, you might say my ship's come in, and that's like the closing line, which is just a great line. There are just so many good Frank. I'm gonna miss this season when it's over. I didn't think I'd say that in the first place.
Give me a second. I'm just adjusting your audio. All right. So we then jump ahead to basically Velcoro, Woodrugh, and Bezzarides just meeting up and just basically figuring out what the game plan is now. They now find out that Davis is dead, so they're pretty fucked. She was the only authority figure that had their back. But Woodrugh tells them, look, I found out back in 92 that Casper was in the same department as Holloway and Burris and T. Dixon, and Casper definitely helped them move the stones because their responsibility was that same neighborhood that Sable Jewelers was in. So there were also 2 orphan kids from that. Their names are Leonard and Laura. So this has to all be how they're connected. Bezzarides has a theory. She says, look, whatever they stole from the jewelry store, the blue diamonds, all of that, that's how they bought their way into these cushy jobs in Vinci. They basically gave them to Austin Chisani at the time, the mayor of Vinci. And that's how they got these jobs. The only one who didn't seem to have a cushy job was Dixon. He must have just been a fucking idiot. But Woodrugh then says, look, before Casper's murder, Dixon was already checking in on these blue diamonds. So something was going on there. And the last thing that he found out was that back in 2006, Kevin Burris actually busted Lito Amaria, who was the Mexican gangster that they were involved in the shootout with. And Lito was released after interrogation, no notes kept. So clearly that day was a setup. Lito was definitely in Burris's control, and it was set up in a way to make them think that Lito was the perpetrator of all of this, and Lito dying was just another, stone that Burris took care of. So something was going on there, and before they, when they looked into Casper's place, they found out that the place had already been searched. So clearly somebody was searching for those diamonds and their evidence in the murder case, the double murder case of the owners of Sable Jewelers. So Bezzarides theorizes that Tasha was going to blackmail Casper. So Holloway, Burris, they're the ones who killed Casper. But it also doesn't make sense at the same time because, actually, no, sorry. I don't know who theorizes that. So maybe, Ray's the one who theorizes that. He's like, look, Holloway and Burris, they killed Casper because they wanted to shut this case down, tie up loose ends. But Annie's like, that doesn't make sense because Casper dying brings exposure to all of this. If he doesn't die, no one really knows all about this. So, also, if they had Casper in their control, they could just torture him and find out where the diamonds are. So she doesn't believe that Holloway and Burris are the ones who killed Casper. This is when Woodrugh gets another text from this number basically saying, meet me tonight, at midnight, I'll sell you these pictures. And Woodrow's like, okay, I got to get out of this. I got to leave. They don't really know what's going on. They're trying to figure out like what they can do, like who they can go to help them within the authorities, and there's really no options right now, so they're kind of fucked. What do you think about just that game planning scene?
Their allies are completely spent because we know Davis got caught, and we know Geldof is not the guy that we thought he was, which is probably why Davis got caught. The scene you mentioned where we feel much different from Frank being in the city of Vinci's pocket. Like, it's almost like they've just been collecting disposable gangster types to basically roll them over whenever they need to. The biggest version of that. The reason that Osip floats is because he has his own backing from Russia, where Frank and Lito would be more localized dudes, gangsters in a lot of ways.
Yeah. All right. So next scene, we jump back to the casino. We see the mayor. He's just fucking hammered. He's hitting on some chick, and he's bragging about his family, saying that they're like the Kennedys. And this is when Frank pulls up and basically tells him like, look, your son's been working with OSIP and running these parties behind your back. So So you might want to get the fuck out of here and just figure out how you're getting fucked because you're not in the loop right now. So this actually, sobers Austin up a little bit, and Chisani gets out of there. This is when Osip pulls up and is basically smiling at Frank, telling Frank that, look, he's going to own all the clubs now, and Frank is going to work for him on salary, So Osip says, look, we're going to take your clubs. We're going to use them to wash our own money. And Frank starts playing possum. He's like, look, you guys won. I lost. I'll be on salary. I was out of my element doing the deals with the land stuff. I'm not on your level. And Osip's like, look, you're taking this better than I thought. Is Blake around? And then Frank's like, no, Blake hasn't been around. I don't know where the fuck he's been. And then Osip is like, look, Frank, my board, they thought we should kill you. But I told my board, Frank Semien understands business. He knows how to manage clubs. So it's a very backhanded compliment to Frank. And Frank is now getting put on salary by Osip. And Frank's like, yeah, cool. That sounds good with me. I know my own limitations. So he's just playing possum. But we know Frank has plans to get Osip back. So Osip has no idea what's coming. What did you think about that scene?
I thought the most entertaining part was the Frank and Chisani interact after Chisani is talking about how he thinks that his family is on the same level as the Kennedys, which just some crazy level of self-delusion going on here. But it also showed her.
Right. It's fucked up.
Almost, that's pretty insane, especially when you see the consequences, and he's as unaware, even more so unaware than Frank. The same, really the most self-aware dude. There's no such thing for you, Frank. That world isn't yours. When Osip is telling him, Bix, you're used to, you could see something inside of Frank die when he hears that. Something just shatters.
All right, so next scene, let's see. This is Woodrugh going to meet whoever is blackmailing him, and he actually calls Ray before, and he goes like, look, I'm there's something else going on. Just somebody sent me these pictures. I might be walking into an ambush. I'll call you back. So we see Woodrugh actually meet with his ex-lover, and he's like, oh shit. So he's been the one who's in on it, and do you remember what this guy's name is? I fucking forget. Yeah.
It's Tommy.
Yeah, it is Tommy from The Last of Us. Let me see.
Let me look it up.
Well, so anyways, this guy, Miguel. So he's still working with the private security company that him and Woodrugh used to be at. They've now rebranded as like Aries Security, and they only have one client, which is Catalyst Group. So very, very interesting there. But Miguel's like, look, I got to take your gun. I'm sorry about this. You got to come meet, who we're working for. So Woodrugh has been getting double crossed. Meanwhile, we cut back to Ray. It's just him and Annie at the motel room. He tells Annie like that was Woodrugh. He thinks he's walking into something, but he didn't tell me much more. Annie is onto something. So she goes, look, she's been looking through these photographs that they found and, from these parties and stuff like that. And they see one photograph where there's this woman and she's like, look, does she look familiar? And they're looking at her and Annie's like, look, Vera said there was a girl, that was named Laura and, she's at this party. She looks so familiar. What's going on here? So Ray takes a closer look and Ray's like, no, that's not Laura. That girl's name is Erica. She was the assistant to the city manager. So she was actually Casper's assistant. So her real name is Erica. She just told everyone, her real name is Laura. She told everyone she was Erica. So now this is very interesting. And they also met her that day on the movie set earlier this season. So, this is a smoking gun in the sense because Bezarides then says, look, remember, Woodrugh said one of the orphans in the 92 robbery was named Laura. So now all of a sudden, like, this whole thing changes, and they're like, holy fuck, maybe we're starting to find a motive, what's going on. So they look at a picture of the orphans when they were younger, and then they try to compare it to a photo of this older Laura. It's kind of hard to tell because, you know, there's just these images, but something is there. I'm going to pause it here before we go to the showdown that Woodrugh has. Did you have any thoughts?
On that.
Okay. So Woodrugh gets led to these like sewer tunnels, and he's obviously outnumbered. And it turns out that the person who wants to meet him is Chief Holloway. So Holloway's like, look, you've been asking questions, looking for information about me. You can ask all of your questions right now. So he's in a terrible spot. Meanwhile, we cut back to the motel room. Betrayals has done a little bit of research, and they find out that Laura actually moved out of her apartment 6 weeks ago, and she quit the city manager's office around that time. So this is very interesting. Now all of a sudden she's just not working there anymore. So they're like, look, we can ask Woodrugh to run a trace on her because he's still able to get access to the database. He can figure out where she went. But they're like, look, he's not picking up right now, so this is kind of a problem, you know. So now there's nothing they can do. They can just wait for Woodrugh. So both of them just kind of are hanging out. It's just them two in a motel room. Meanwhile, Frank is up to a little scheme. So he tells one of OSIP's security at the casino. He's like, look, there's a fire right now, or we got a gas leak spilling into the AC. We got to clear this place out for several hours. And the guy's like, are you serious? Frank's like, everybody out. So he has now gotten everyone out of the casino. Before we jump back to the scene, is there anything else you want to say there? Or
I just think that you can really feel that Woodrugh is as well. Like, you feel like both of these guys are at a point now, especially Woodrugh being in the hands of Catalyst, then buys up the services of the private militia. I think there are a lot of companies like Catalyst that indeed do employ, like in this country, private militia in some ways.
Yep. All right, so we go to the continued meeting between Woodrugh and Holloway, and Holloway's just like, look, we weren't even trying to blackmail you. We found these pictures of you and Miguel when we were clearing out Teague Dixon's apartment. So it looks like he was the one following you guys. He's actually the one who was blackmailing you. And then Miguel the entire time is like, look, if you were just honest about who you were and stuff, this wouldn't be happening. Holloway wants something from Woodrugh, though. He's like, look, there were some documents that were stolen from a party in Monterey, so basically that sex party, and I need those documents. And Woodrough's like, look, I don't have them on me, but Holloway's like, well, either Betrayals or Velcoro has them. And Woodrugh doesn't have a lot of leverage right now, so he just says, look, those documents, they might be going to the feds, but I can call Velcoro up right now. I can set up a meeting. If you let me off and I get every fucking copy of those pictures of me with Miguel, then maybe we don't drag you down. So Holloway's kind of like, okay, call Ray, set up a meeting, and that's that. Then we jump over to Frank. Frank takes all the cash that he has stashed in a safe in the casino, and then as he's leaving, one of OSIP's goons come up and ask him, like, OSIP wants to know where the gas leak is. Frank just fucking kills the guy. I think he just shoots him. Yeah, he just shoots him in the head. And then Frank goes over to the kitchen, and he actually just lights the casino on fire. So Frank is just saying, fuck you, OSIP. Like, you can go to hell. Then we, while this is going on, we see Woodrough's mom and Emily just at the motel room, just watching old movies and stuff like that. We cut back to Woodrugh, and he's trying to call Ray, or basically pretending to call Ray. He's saying, oh yeah, I don't get any service down here. And he's just using this as an excuse to get close to Holloway. He grabs Holloway's gun from his pocket and then holds Holloway hostage. And he's just using it as a path to escape. So he quickly just drops Holloway and then starts sprinting away. So now they're chasing after him. He's outnumbered because these guys are all private security, so they're all heavily trained. I'm gonna cut over to Frank and Annie Ray and Annie real quick. They unless you have anything to say about that little runaway scene. Oh shit, hold on. David, can you hear me? Let me say something. Sorry, I can't hear your audio right now. Let me see. Oh. Okay, say something now, I think. Yeah, I can hear you now.
All right. The only thing that I noticed was when Hallway's describing like the tunnels being is like sprawling and reaches the entire city.
Yeah.
That was my only metaphor there.
All right. Then we cut back to Ray and Annie, and they're obviously like getting a little bit closer to each other. And Ray's talking a little bit about his son. He's like, when this all pops, it's gonna be very hard on my son. They're drinking whiskey, bonding, stuff like that. And then I think this is when no, Annie doesn't say anything yet, but their hands start touching, so we know where this is going. So then we cut back to Woodrugh basically running for his life, and he's got limited ammo, and I think he ends up killing. He doesn't kill Miguel, but he kills like two of the fucking guys chasing after him. Meanwhile, as this is going down, Ray and Annie finally start fucking, and Frank continues to just grab his cash and get the fuck out of there. Let's see. Let's jump ahead. So Frank kind of watches the entire casino burn, and he realizes like he can never come back to his life. We end the episode on Woodrugh nearly escaping. So he busts out of the tunnels, and this was a fucking amateur mistake, I thought. Like, he lets his guard down for a second, pulls out his phone to make a call, and gets ambushed by Burris, who just shoots him once in the back. And it's really sad because we see his girlfriend Emily. She kind of like feels something weird in the universe, and she just feels this sadness. And then Woodrugh gets shot in the head, and that is how this episode ends. So, did you have any like final thoughts?
I thought it was obviously not like the happy. Well, the first season wasn't that happy, but like this isn't the storybook ending of the first season. Let's just say, in terms of a much darker season, it set the tone from the jump. It's noir, and noirs, like not a lot of people come out unscathed. All these leads, you got arguably 4 leads this season, and they're playing with fire. They're messing with dangerous people. Burst probably Hitler. They're just bad dudes.
Yep.
That's
all right. Well, that does it. Sorry guys about the audio. We'll try to figure it out. I don't know what the fuck is going on, to be totally honest, but we'll finish this out with one more episode. Hopefully we have the audio fixed for that, and then if any of you guys watching are good with streaming audio and can help us out, honestly, would really appreciate that. But otherwise, like we'll keep uploading. We're gonna be doing more video content that's not streams right now, so you guys won't have to worry about audio stuff. We'll just be back to our regular videos, and hopefully we figure out this audio stuff. But we will catch you guys later.
Later.